And anything on your side?
Okay, let's see. No, it won't let me.
That is so
Even though
weird.
it gives me the option to press record, it won't record. It's
Okay.
fine. We'll
Okay.
find a way.
All
It's fine.
right, that's fine. I just hope because I just sometimes my assistant normally gets on Hair Zoom and it's not the premium one. So probably I am just
I
hoping
see.
it's not
Look,
hairs.
we can share this via WeTransfer,
Perfect.
and then
That's
I'll
perfect.
I'll upload it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's perfect. Yeah. All right. So I'll just ask a few questions, but we're just going to have a conversation reviewing the last elections and stuff like that. And
Awesome.
yeah, so we'll just go like in a deep dive and have just a flow. Okay, so we can start. Hi, Miss Level Lion, the voice of marketing. And what is the saying goes?
The voice of marketing and your friend in all things
Ah,
marketing, brand building, business mindset, and sometimes pop
pop
culture.
culture. I just love it. I just love it. It's always that hook gets to me because like you
Ne?
just because when you talk about marketing, like you talk about marketing, you're talking to me and I love it. You know, I didn't study marketing, but I just love it because there's just some things that we missed, especially as Black people, you know. And I was just thinking now that, you know, it's coming from these elections that I was just wanting to, first thing I wanted to ask that I didn't want to that I didn't want to say to you was like, can the Black brand, the African brand, be salvaged? Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever we talk about Black business, Black people, there is this brand of corruption, of, you know, bad service, everything that is bad. Is it something that we can salvage? Like, what do you think? Just before we even get to the topic for the day.
You know, that question, starting off this conversation with that question,
Yeah.
could already make us trend for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we even thought about the idea that Blackness is a brand,
Mm,
actually, in South Africa, especially with the racial climate that we come from and the one that we're in.
exactly.
Being Black is a brand. Because a lot of people will argue that if you're going to be talking about people as human beings, then their race doesn't necessarily define them. But when you're coming from an apartheid racist history, then your race is part of your branding. It's the reason why you will have certain opportunities and the reason why you won't.
Exactly.
The reason why you'll be listened to and the reason why you won't. So it is branding. Our skin color in this country, unfortunately, is branding. And so when we ask the question, can we salvage the Black brand? I think
Sorry.
one of the questions we need to be
Just
asking
mute,
ourselves
mute. Sorry. Okay, continue.
is Blackness Africanness?
Mm,
That's
mm,
the question we need to ask ourselves. There are many white South Africans, many Indian, Asian, South Africans who say, but I'm an African too. So when you say African, you're not actually speaking about Black people. You're speaking about people who live in this country, which is a very different thing, right? But then there's some people who say, no, African only means a Black person. So first we have to actually define, is
what?
an African person a Black person? Or is an African person a person
Mm,
who resides on the continent? That's the first thing we have to talk about when we talk about can we salvage the African brand? And the second thing is if we agree,
mm.
let's say we are working on the premise that being African means being
The
Black,
skin.
then yeah, the color of your skin, having
Mm,
brown skin, Black skin this way, and a certain kind of heritage. Then we talk about when we say salvage, what are we salvaging it from? Is my
mm,
question, right?
mm,
Because
mm,
what I
mm.
always say to people is branding never happens by mistake. It's a very conscious decision that's usually driven by political and commercial objectives. So for the fact that Blackness and Africanness in this context would stand for corruption, lack of education, blah, 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 is something that somebody wrote. There's a group of people who came up with
Mm,
narratives and they put money into it to make it real. And not only did they put money into it to make it real, maybe through
sure.
media and that kind of thing, but then they created systems that made it a reality in the environments that are occupied by people who
My
look like us.
goodness.
So when we talk about the concept of branding and marketing, we're not talking about adverts. We're
Mm,
talking about the strategies that are used by people who have the power, it doesn't matter in what sector, what industry, who have the power to create culture. Does that
sure.
make sense?
That
So when
is
we're
deep.
talking about
Just
African culture,
just there on, you're just dropping bombs. I just need to take the last one. You're
No, but
saying
it's true, no?
you're saying these people have influenced and created an African culture, and we have bought
Yes,
into that culture,
we don't
and
have
we
a
have not a
choice.
say.
Because we don't have a choice because we're not
Sure.
talking about the fact that they advertised our culture to us. No, they created a
Mm,
world in which the way we live on a daily basis is a certain way.
my
And that is what
goodness.
culture is. So if you've got engineered poverty, because poverty is engineered, I don't think people actually understand. I mean, I love economics. It was one of my favorite subjects. I even tutored it in university.
Mm,
And I am a marketer. I'm not an advertiser. So I'm a strategist.
mm,
And I look at economics and business models to determine how strategies are formulated for marketing. So when you think about Black culture, the
sure.
fact that when we say my culture, we're saying eating uh, chicken feet, gizzards, all of those, the offals, all of those parts of the animal that are usually thrown away, the cheapest
Mm,
parts. That's not a mistake that would be our culture when you think of being a Black person. That a lot of our staple foods are foods that are zero rated, right? There's a reason why Black cultural food is poverty food, right? And somebody created that culture that Blackness emulates poverty. It isn't by mistake. The same way that poverty is something that's manufactured in societies, it's designed. It's not something that just happens. Because when
mm,
people who are in power want to change the culture, they can, and you will see a very different society.
sure.
And then whiteness is the opposite. There's a reason for that.
Mm,
It's been engineered. It's not just existing by mistake. So I don't think the average human being can salvage brand Black because we did not create it.
we didn't have a say.
We
Wow.
didn't create it. It's the people who created it who can change it if they want to. And that's why we vote, so that they can actually change it.
But are
But
we
it
even
doesn't seem
aware
like any
though?
of the
Are we even
Mhm.
aware? Are we even aware of that there's a need? Because I think I really stumbled on this topic whilst preparing for for today's topic, and I
Yeah.
realized based on your opening alone that this is actually
Mhm.
deep. It's deeper than I thought, and it needs
Very,
for
very.
us to go and like just touch on it properly.
Yes.
I was having shivers when you were talking about it because I realized what you just said is so important. It's so deep. We did not have
Yes,
an inf
it's so deep.
we did not have a
We
say.
we don't make a decision. We don't. We're not because we're not powerful enough to. And I'm not saying this from a perspective of like, oh, only CEOs can make decisions. I'm saying in
Mm,
culture there are power dynamics. And the people who might reinforce the culture or maintain the culture, the actual people, like the Black people who eat the food and live in the townships, are not the ones who fund the culture. And the
yeah.
funding will always supersede the living of the culture. And the person who
Mm,
funds it is usually more in charge. So if you don't want to subscribe to the culture, you'll be kicked out of the society you live in because you're going against the grain and nobody likes that.
oh,
So people aren't aware of the conditioning that culture gives them. And that's the crazy part. We cry and we say we want poverty to end. We want Black people to be educated. All these things, we cry about them, right?
mm,
But a lot of us are not aware that if the bodies in power who create culture were to take that away from us, we would actually think that they were stripping away a
that's
part of our
an
identity
identity.
because it's our
Yeah.
culture now. If we're not eating Mautwana, who are we?
And it's Lokshin
If I don't have a
culture.
township to go back to, who am I? But actually, we shouldn't have townships to be living in the first place. Do you get what I'm saying? So
We
we're
bought
going to
into
resist.
it.
People say they want it. Yes, we say we want
A
poverty to
better
go away.
life.
We say we want all these things, but we don't because we're going to resist that change. We're going to feel like, Upper, where's my identity if I don't have a township to go to? Where's my identity if I don't do certain things? Even though those things are actually not supposed to be part of your identity, they were forced upon you. And that's all marketing, by the way. It's marketing and PR.
Wow. Sure,
Yeah.
this is deep. Like, no, 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 we need a part two.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even just this part might make some people very angry because they'll say, oh, but label doesn't like people.
Yeah.
She's a class of people. Culture's culture. That's all
And
it is.
and
Anyone
it's
can have any culture.
and culture is actually a group of habits that we form and then we
That's it.
identify with, literally.
Yes. Yes, and then big corporates sell within the culture.
Yeah.
That's it.
And they make money from it.
So
Hence now that we're talking about township economy, big corporates wanting to invest into the township economy, opening malls because now oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, no, I was not prepared. I was not prepared for this. Like, because there's so many questions that I'm realizing we only have an hour, and I was like, we needed to. But wow.
next,
Oh,
there's a
okay,
lot
okay.
to
No,
say
no, no.
about
I think
that.
I need to prepare myself for this because this is don't want to do it injustice because this you really touched, you triggered something within me that I was not ready for. Because today I wanted to ask to talk about politics and what was happening and especially marketing side. Whew. Okay, let me just get some water.
Let me do the same,
You got
actually.
me excited. Oh my goodness. Okay,
Okay.
so definitely doing a part two. Well, so okay, now why not link to what we just spoke about, like before, where we are talking about the not having any say in terms of how we are marketed as Black people and how we are sold as Black people. And it now links to what we have seen in us choosing our representatives. And even like how we saw now where it's like we even how our representatives talk to us and sell their ideologies to us. Do you think they're
Mhm.
doing a good job, these politicians, in how the political parties, in how they're actually selling themselves to us? And I want us maybe later to just talk about your ratings in terms of the political parties that actually would, because we in these political parties, they've got campaign managers. And I want you to rate these campaign managers in terms of the effectiveness of their campaigns and how we interpret their political message. Yeah, do you want to
Mhm.
say anything on that? Yeah.
So do I think that they're doing a good job, the political
Yeah.
parties, just generally
And
in South
generally,
Africa?
first, yeah.
You know what? It's very difficult to say simply because our society is divided not only racially, but also economically.
Mm,
And with that economic division comes the intellectual and educational division that will create different demands and appetites
mm,
for leadership,
okay.
right? If you have a society that's largely poor, maybe not so adequately educated, because people go to school, but I don't think the education is
Mm,
adequate,
yeah.
then their ability and capacity to interrogate leadership, understand what they want out of the world, and all of those kinds of things is going to be very different to somebody who might also be Black, but went to a better school,
Mm,
lived in a different environment. Their perception of what leadership should be and how parties should campaign would be different, right? So I was actually having this conversation on Instagram, and I said to them, a Mpho Dagada or a Mmusi Maimane will never win in South Africa.
mm,
For as long as most people are poor and not adequately educated, they cannot win because they represent this Obama-esque type of leadership that
okay.
actually talks down to the people
Okay.
by branding, right? You're wearing a suit, you're speaking good English. We can't
Mm,
relate to
it's
you.
not
Yes, you're
relatable.
speaking our mother tongue, but it doesn't sound the same. We don't actually believe that you've been through what we've been through. You wouldn't even know. Do you even know what apartheid is? It's too far removed from what they believe leadership and Blackness to be.
Mm,
And for you to be a leader in an African country, you must embody Africanness, whatever that is in that
mm,
different country, in that specific country. So Mpho Dagada and Mmusi Maimane for me will never win in our lifetime until education improves, until poverty is better. They'll never win. Their
mm,
campaigns will fall flat, and it will always seem kind of bourgeoisie,
mm.
just off center.
Out
It
of
does. It will never
touch.
really relate. Out of touch. That's the word. That's
Mm,
the phrase. Out of touch. Whereas for the Juliuses, the Zumas, I don't know if I'd put Cyril there. I
mm.
think what Cyril leverages from is legacy.
Yeah.
So people believe in him because he's holding that ANC legacy as part of his brand, which
Okay.
is working for him. But when you look at how he shows up, he still seems less relatable. He
Mm,
seems less fully South African than like a Zuma would, for example, you know? So
Yeah.
he seems a bit more detached.
With the
Many people believe him as a
iPad
businessman with the iPad.
and
His jokes are dry. Like
mm,
he's not, we don't feel like
mm,
we know him very
mm,
well, you
yeah.
know? So I think a lot of people kind of go, oh, but he was there with Mandela, so we love him, right?
Mm,
That's why they love him. But I think a Zuma and Julius
Julius.
Malema completely understand what it is to play into the public's demands. They know the people want somebody who represents Black excellence, but without being detached from Blackness.
Okay.
And then we can even go into a conversation about what Blackness is.
What?
That's
Yeah.
another
That's another
500-hour conversation,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
But they do it so well. So how do they do it? The way they speak English. I'm going to tell you now, you can leave the room. Sir, Julius can speak differently to that. But he's choosing deliberately to do that to show people, I'm still Black, I'm not a white person, right? The way that they articulate themselves. Zuma, always adding in his mother tongue, always singing struggle songs. You know, the way he holds himself is like an older Black man who we trust in the community. And he leverages off of that, right? The fact that his enemy is the white people, that's how he kind of presents himself, makes him seem like he's aligned to Black people and our cause and our struggle. So I think it depends on, if you're going to say how effective the parties are, you also have to look at how they posture Blackness, how they signal Blackness through their leadership and through their messaging. So for me, because I'm one of those Black people who, I was born in 1990, I went to private schools my whole life. To me, an Obama-esque presentation of leadership is more trustworthy. It appeals to me because I understand, I believe, the way the world works, and I see everything at play. So for me, when I see leaders that posture by trying too hard to appeal to us, I see that as a danger signal. I'm thinking, why are you trying so hard to convince me that you're like me? Right? Because your lifestyle doesn't imply that you're like
It
me.
doesn't.
Or your
Doesn't.
scandals don't imply that you're like me. But then you're trying to seem like, well, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Where you find those parties with the Mpotagadas and the Musima Manis, he's not posturing for us. It doesn't come across like that for me. So it comes across like this guy's just concerned about policies, about doing the right thing. He's speaking fact. It makes sense to me. He's not trying to impress me with anything else. And that's what I like. I like leadership that looks a bit more transparent to me, that isn't trying to play into my, lived experience. I don't like that. But I know for most South Africans, the effective way to campaign would be the Julius Malema Zuma way. Yeah. Because a lot of Black people, outside of them seeing figures like a Julius and a Zuma, they don't actually feel represented in our country. When they go to work, they've got white bosses who don't care about them, who feel whatever. You get what I'm saying? I'm generalizing. But they've got that. That's the experience. I didn't even know this because, like I said, I grew up privileged, and it's always so funny when you mention that to people, because they get so upset and they go, "So you wouldn't know anything?" No, actually, I would, because I understand what it's like to be Black, but I also see the way that the other side is living because I've been able to experience both sides. So this is a superpower, actually, and we should be collaborating. But anyway, the one time many years ago, I used to have a helper, and I'd give her money and I'd say, "Please buy yourself food," because we used to have like shops 2 streets away from my apartment. And I said to her, "Please buy yourself food and get whatever cleaning products are necessary. You can keep the change." Every week, I just put the money there. And every week I come back and the money's still there. So the one time I said to her, "But why aren't you eating? Like, what's going on?" She says, "No, the one time I tried to go to the shops and they didn't want to serve me." And I said, "What?" Her name is Mam Kize. She lives in Soweto. And Ubwasa Zulu, she speaks Zulu. She's not very fluent in English, but I mean, the cashiers at the shop at the Pick n Pay are Black women. So I was surprised. So I said to her, "No, let's go." And I went with her. And she was even afraid to walk into the shop. And I said to her, "But what's going on?" She said, "No, they don't treat me well." I said, "Well, you're with me. We're going to get everything that you need." We went in, we got the things, and she was surprised at how different her experience was walking with me versus when she's alone. And for me, it's like the small things like that that make me understand that for most poor Black people, they don't feel safe or represented or seen in our country. So when we have leaders who say, "I see you and I'm like you and I succeed being like you," that's a very, very big symbol of hope for people. And it's powerful.
Yeah.
Right. So a Julius and a Zuma will always win over Podagada or Musi Maimane or even a Cyril Ramaphosa, because that's a profound experience. And we really undermine the fact that experiences, people vote with their feelings. They don't vote with facts.
Because
they vote for who they relate to, not who has the best manifesto or policy.
Exactly. It's who they see. It's who they see. So now, with that then in mind, where we are saying that, okay, our people choose people who they see that actually represents them. So now in how then the political parties then market it, and we're seeing now with the final election results, we're seeing that like we were saying, Julius Malema, it was more appealing to most of the poorest of our people. But then we're seeing now also in the election outcome where it was different. The way you saw now he was fourth, and we're seeing the DAs are performed better, whereas with the DA it had even like so many big scandals, and we saw with even the MK being dragged to court but still performed better. So how can you then say that they are more appealing to our people but the results say something different? What happened, what transpired with the way was it the marketing, is it the messaging? What happened in your analysis?
So when we think of marketing, I want us to think about culture and the dynamics of culture and people, because that's what we really mean when we're saying marketing. And I think a lot of people are thinking about the advertising, so they're going, but the EFF advertised so much.
They put
How
posters.
come they didn't get more votes? They had the whole Judas was levitating at the stadium, and it was a whole dramatic thing. But people vote with emotions, and the emotions you tap into aren't always reflected by advertising, right? Advertising simply tries to get in there a little bit more. They try to get to the people a bit more. They try to amplify you a bit more. They try to target the heartstrings of people, but it doesn't mean that it's truly effective. But I think EFF has done very well, and I think their advertising was incredibly successful. And I'll tell you why. Because we also live in a country, remember our history is apartheid, and then we have the ANC that kind of took over, and they abolished apartheid and they freed us all. That is the narrative, right? What is it? Goliath and David and Goliath. So Goliath was the apartheid, David was ANC. ANC was the victor, and it freed us all. And I even wrote an article about this in our newsletter for our community, and I was saying the most valuable kind of brand you can have is a legacy brand with a differentiation that is so unique that nobody else can copy it, even if they wanted to. So there is no other party in our country that could ever free us from apartheid again. That is the invaluable USP or differentiating factor that the ANC has, right? And so that legacy, it's always going to matter, and it's always going to make them relevant, at least in our lifetime. Maybe in another lifetime, ANC will have a very different brand, but for now, that legacy still tugs at your heartstrings. You still feel like you are defying your ancestors by voting for another party other than the ANC. Even if you weren't there during apartheid, you still feel like, maybe I should give them a chance. Maybe I've done something wrong, because legacy means something, especially when the legacy is that, right? And now the thing about it is, most of us, we have a binary story of our history. So it is literally apartheid versus ANC, which was translated post-94 to ANC versus DA. The DA doesn't want to admit that, honestly, their brand is still apartheid. Not that they oppress us, but they are led by the oppressors. They symbolize the oppressors, whether they like it or not. So they are still that David and Goliath story that the ANC had before 94. And so when people are trying to punish this ANC and say, we need you to do better, the only option they have in the binary story they've created for themselves is, then the other option is to vote DA. It is an emotional response to a narrative that has been deeply ingrained within them.
Oh, wow.
It's got nothing to do with the advertising of the EFF. It's got everything to do with the ingrained history and knowledge that we have of our country, that binary story. And remember, in advertising and marketing, storytelling is everything. If you tell a story that's hard to forget, that's the story that people will believe is the reality. And that's what they're going to go with to the polls. It won't be the adverts that they saw. it won't be the new information they've been presented with. It will be the story that they believe. And they believe that the ANC is either the big bad guy or the guy who saved us, and something needs to be done to him. So the only other worthy opponent is the person that they what is it, took over, which would be the DA or white people, the symbol of that. So we're going to show them a lesson by voting for this party.
So this story, is it then, is it something because it happened through legacy that then we buy into it? Because I don't think that these political parties are actually involved in formulating the story and pushing it forward.
They're not.
Yeah.
Legacy is a story told over time that people believe in and buy into.
It's like a folk tale.
That's what a legacy is. Yeah, honestly, that's kind of what a legacy is, except with legacy, you can commercialize it because the story stands for so much that people want to buy that story in everything that they consume. So, and that's why a legacy brand is the most powerful. Julius Malema came from the ANC. So that ANC past gave him credibility.
Yeah.
The Zuma tick that he got back in the day gave him credibility. And he knew that, and he ran with it when he was starting the EFF. If he had just come from somewhere else without having come from the ANC, people would not believe him.
Exactly.
And that's why now when you're ready,
oh my goodness, just a sec. I'm having a bit of an internet issue.
no problem.
I have no idea now what happened. My home router doesn't want to connect. Okay. It's fine. Let's just continue. If you can hear me? All right. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem, no problem. These things happen.
Yeah. All right, so I think let's just because I lost you the last. I don't know if you noticed when I started skipping off.
It was like when I was finishing my sentence. So it wasn't that far.
It wasn't far.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we can just, but I think let's. Do you still remember what you were going? I just wanted to just for recording purposes.
I'll do the end part. Yeah.
Okay. We can then continue. Then I'll ask from there.
Yeah. So when we look at what I would call the top three parties in our elections, and that would be the ANC, the EFF, and the MK, all of them are kind of like subsets of the ANC in some way, shape, or form, right? And everybody who's winning from those parties is using the ANC legacy brand to validate them and make them credible, right? So Julius's association to the ANC Youth League is what gave him credibility to run a party that might work. The MK has always been part of the ANC, right? In fact, they actually gave the ANC that legacy of being for the people. Before the MK was fully attached to the ANC was kind of like a party for the Black intellectuals. Black, not even just everyone, but like the rebels who are intellectual. But when the MK came on, it became this brave party that was willing to fight, the radical party willing to fight for the justices of Black people. So all of these things are part of the ANC in some way, shape, or form, which actually shows you that the country still believes in the ANC, that the ANC still makes things credible, whether we like it or not, as a brand. If the ANC were just to change their leadership, ANC would get the majority vote again. That's how powerful that legacy brand is.
Wow. So this is why then we saw the Mpos and the Rise Mzansis and the Bosas suffering, because they're not attached to that legacy brand.
They don't have. What do they know? From the average consumer's perspective, what do they know? You know, all of these parties that are starting, so interesting. We were talking, I was thinking about branding, how each party is actually branding themselves, like their
Yeah.
colors and
Yeah.
everything. And when you look at these other parties, Bo Rise, Bo Ahang, I can't even tell you what their logos look like off of the top of my head. I can't tell you what their party colors are.
You've been able to identify.
It's not even, you can't identify it. But then let me say EFF, people will tell you red, black,
Yeah,
red.
it's in
You
your
know, you
face.
say ANC, green, gold, black.
Mm.
You say MK, black, green, gold. But yeah, we know. I mean, gosh, I'm not even that interested in politics because I see too much. But I still know those logos, you know, and I know them without even trying.
You
So
can
it says
easily.
something about you. The DA, they true, true. And the DA's logo for me is very forgettable. The only reason why we know DA is because they are also tied to the apartheid struggle. And because of that, they are the villain in the story. We need a villain in the story. A story is boring if it doesn't have a villain.
Without a villain.
We always need an oppressor, a villain, or someone who's bad. They represent that. And they act like they don't, which is so funny, right?
Yeah.
Because I think if they just admitted that to themselves, they would probably change how they campaign so that they can actually leverage their brand. But they want to make their brand this peaceful thing, and it doesn't represent that
It's
to
not
most of
coming
us.
across. Yeah, they should own their
No.
inner villain.
That's
And we,
their story. Their story is being a
yeah.
villain.
And sometimes we love villains. I mean, it
And
happens.
sometimes we love villains. That is exactly it.
Yeah, if you own your
Right?
truth.
You
Yeah.
don't have to be good. You just have to know how to tell your own story properly and know where
Yeah.
you are in the game.
I mean, isn't that
Mm.
what we see with Jacob Zuma now, where he's been painted as the villain, and yet he's so popular amongst the people? So that's
Mm.
something there. But now I want us to look at how American politics market. And I don't know if you've seen some of the movies. It's like, I think there's a Netflix series it's called A Politician, where they take campaigning seriously. They look at polls. Like
Yeah.
whenever there is if you did something scandalous, you look at the poll rating, like
Mm.
everything is going to change how the voters perceive you.
Yes.
How they do that in America? Is it something that could work if we also took the campaigning seriously, if we looked at how we are perceived by I'm saying by how we as the political parties now are playing the devil's advocate, and I'm asking you as the person,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think we'll ever have this conversation, the politicians will ever have the conversations with people like you where they would
They won't.
because this is wealth of
They won't.
knowledge. It's wealth of
They
knowledge.
won't. They'll call me a slay queen and say
You
that
know,
I don't know what I'm talking about.
and I'm thinking, my goodness, if you just give someone like you a chance and advise in their campaigns, a lot could happen.
Mhm.
A lot would happen. And I feel like, so do you think that if we applied the same tactics in studying how
Mhm.
voters perceive political parties, and how, like, having someone to advise and like talk to them, listen, how you are presenting yourself, my money, you are sort of detached. Like, don't you think it would add value? And so, but going to my original question, comparing the American politics system and how they campaign and market and versus how we do it, well, how can we merge the gap there or
Yeah.
bridge?
You know, one thing about Americans, I call it the birthplace of advertising and PR. They're so good at it.
Mm,
Americans are so good at this thing that they can PR and market anything and somehow it will sell or be
mm,
noticed or whatever. So what we fail to realize is for a long time, America has had what's the word, not authority, agency over how they tell their story to the world.
mm,
And they've done that through the various military and political associations and whatever's that they've done that make people quiet, that make people align with them, all of these crazy things that America has done, right? And then Trump came along. And Trump completely exposed this very clean image we have of Americans, where we think that they're a highly organized society with very articulate, accountable leaders, that they really think through things, that Americans are, by virtue of being American, incredibly smart people who are exposed to the world, blah, blah, blah. No, no. Trump said, no, we have hillbillies, we have this, we have that. And those are the people who are voting the most, the farmers, the whoever's. And they don't care about your policies. They don't care about all these things. They care about how you're making them feel. Are you talking their language? They don't like that foreigners, in inverted commas, are coming into our country and taking jobs. So I'm going to say that I don't like it too. You know, he's showing you, he's doing exactly what Bozuma are doing. He's doing exactly what Cyril and them are doing. He's exposing the country and saying, no, guys, actually, the American citizen and the American landscape is not what you thought it was. Because if it was that, they would have never voted for Trump. Let's be honest. It would make absolutely no sense. There is no reason really to vote for Trump unless you're looking for somebody charismatic who's relatable. Who is he relatable to? The American. Not just the rednecks. He's relatable to the Americans.
Okay.
Americans go around the world creating wars. Who's funding that? Right? Remember, because politics is a two-pronged thing. They're funding it. It's politics and marketing are two-pronged things. It's the culture where you leverage the people, etc., and it's the money. The money will decide who gets into power.
Sure.
And I think Trump actually represented the voice that the money never had and the audacity that the money never had to say what they really wanted to say. So I want us as human beings to really observe America with a more critical eye and ask ourselves if the country we were always shown is the country that it really is. Right?
Yeah.
And then we can have more grace when we look at our own country and say, no, but the politics are actually similar in terms of how we're marketing. It's just that how we market that process is different. So in South Africa, a lot of things happen, but we don't document it. We don't document it properly. We don't, show it in a way that makes us look good. So we will think we don't have campaign managers, speech writers, but we do. And we've got some really good ones. But remember, I'm writing for a country where there are 11 different languages, 12 different languages. That's different. You're designing a brand because a minister is a personal brand. A president is a personal brand. You're designing a personal brand that has to appeal to 11, 12 different cultures. Sure. That's complicated.
That's a lot.
It's very different to, white versus black in America. And I'm being very simplistic because obviously those aren't the cultures. There are lots of nuances in the cultures, but you still have a more complex culture in Africa than they do in the rest of the world. That's even why you find so many brands struggle to make it on that continent because they don't understand the nuances and the differences in our cultures. So actually, if you can do politics in Africa, you can do it anywhere else in the world because it is actually, I think, much easier anywhere else in the world than here. And we've got some good people, but we're not documenting the work that they do. We're not showing them as superheroes. And Americans do that. They go, "This I Have a Dream" speech was amazing. Then they'll do a documentary about the guy. Then they'll do this and this. That's what's lacking here. We're not doing enough of the advertising and the storytelling about how great we are. And I think if the ANC did that more, if the DA did that more, if MK did that more, then they would find more strength on the polls. Because the EFF did that. I mean, even when I was trying to prepare for this, I went onto YouTube, and the EFF has the biggest following on YouTube for based compared to all the other political parties. Okay. They've got like 255,000 subscribers. Wow. All the other political parties have less than 60,000 subscribers.
Wow.
The ANC has the least. They have less than the MK.
Wow.
That makes no sense. When you go on the ANC's YouTube page, it's boring as hell. It looks highly curated. It doesn't make any sense, really. It's boring. You go to EFF, they've got a documentary that they've just released on their channel. It's brilliant. I enjoyed watching that documentary. It made you see the EFF as like these young, radical freedom fighters, but they're super intellectual because all of them are going to school. Like, it was brilliant. And they called it the, how do I forget this now? It's that horn, that famous thing when we talk about a horn.
A vuvuzela?
No, it's a Western phrase.
Oh, okay.
It starts with a C.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
But even the way that they've designed it, the way they shot the documentary, brilliant. They're a party that are aware that we're not going to win now, but we're going to win. We are part of somebody's new history. The youth don't know the ANC the way that older people do. So to them, actually, the more credible party is the EFF. And the EFF is taking time to nurture them by telling stories, by being involved in pop culture moments. All of those things matter. And when that person looks back at the story of our country, they're going to see the EFF as the party that participated more than the ANC, because the EFF is where they are. And the ANC is still using that we're offline, the people. But the people are dying. The ones that you guys are targeting are old. They're dying.
Yeah.
And not only are they dying, but they're not sharing the story of the ANC legacy. So they're dying with that legacy. And so the ANC is kind of going to a party that's going to be losing its legacy at some point, because they're not telling the story. So I wouldn't say America's doing it better. I just think they advertise it better.
Yeah, I think that's really what I wanted to, especially with the initial topic, where, because I see that when you actually go to America and you actually you're seeing that actually we've been lied to. There's everything that we see, that we think we know about America, is not what it seems. I mean, and then hence I was asking, so how do we then, as the Africans and the Black people, how do we then tell our story? How do we change the narrative for us? So I think that's something we're going to have to go into detail in the next in the next topic, where we're going to in the next episode. But I wanted, I think, let's maybe bookmark that and then do more in it. So I want to give you the chance to like go fully in depth in it. But it's something that I wanted to. I saw that maybe we need to look
at
the
clarion call. Cry.
Okay,
that's the name.
Okay, now you know not to play 30 seconds with. So yeah, so what I wanted to that, I think there's a slight delay. So what I wanted to then say is that
there is a delay. There's a delay.
Yeah. So with the political parties that you saw, I mean, I want you to rate now the parties that actually would tick the boxes, and maybe or they need a little bit of help, and what is it that maybe you would advise one or two?
Okay, this is fun. Okay, so of the top four, which would be the ANC, DA, MK, EFF, the DA needs the most help. John Steenhuisen is not DA. And when you look at everything they've presented, they've kind of made him DA, which is really not the way to go if you're trying to get the average South African to appeal to you. Yes, in the Western Cape, they got a majority vote, which is lovely for them. But it's not because of their great marketing. It's simply because of ANC's terrible, what they've been doing, So because ANC's been so terrible at what they're doing, I know people will say, oh, no, but they've done, no, they haven't. They could have done more in the time they had, and they didn't. So they've kind of given themselves a bit of a shaky brand. And because of that, people are giving the vote to the DA. But if the ANC were to fix themselves, the vote will go straight back to DA, to the ANC.
To the ANC.
So I think the DA really needs to change their marketing and brand positioning. I think they need to change the story. I think the logo needs to change. Blue doesn't stand for much here.
Yeah.
I don't know why they chose that color blue. In fact, it makes them look even whiter than they are. They claim diversity, but that color doesn't scream it,
Yeah.
So I would do a complete rebrand of the DA completely. And I wouldn't just put in Black leadership. I would actually change their messaging, like the storytelling, because Helen Zille did a number on them. She literally showed what I would call her racist clause in some of the things she was saying, that it's very difficult for them to dissociate from that thing. Yeah. So they really need a complete rebrand. They have to change the messaging, the colors of the logos, the songs that they sing. I don't even know if they sing songs, but they need some struggle songs up in there. And they need a lot more Black people leading it, with white people stepping far back.
Yeah.
Because without that, they'll never fully resonate with the average person. That's just the truth of it, in my opinion. I think the MK needs to do more storytelling. Right now, they're leveraging off of the Zuma brand. And it's only going to take them so far. This man is 82 or 86 years old. I'm not too sure. 82 to 86. So he's old. If he dies tomorrow, what is the MK?
Exactly.
Without him, there is no overt representation of I come from the ANC, I come from the legacy. So they need to be able to be a brand that stands without Zuma. You know, they have to stand for more than just the fact.
Sorry about that, honestly.
But yeah, so no problem, no problem.
Okay.
I'll just continue going.
Okay. Yeah.
So if South Africans are dedicated to unity but also revolution, I think the MK is a very viable option if they change their positioning. So they're not
Yeah.
Zuma, but they're MK, you know? And if they change their logo a little bit, I think they could really do
Yeah.
well. The ANC, you know, branding is more than just the colors and the t-shirts and the logos. Branding is also the people. Branding is also language. Branding is also the culture of a party. Unfortunately, with the ANC, their brand is old. Right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to be legacy, but it's another to be old. Legacy can still be relevant, but old is not. And I think what they need to do in the ANC is to rebrand within, in terms of the people within the actual ANC. They need more youth at the forefront. You know, they need to be speaking in a way that is more current. The fact that their social media pages have the least
Yeah.
amount of followers makes no sense to me. They should be
Yeah.
right up there with the EFF or even more.
Yeah.
So the fact that they don't means that they're not fully invested in telling the story to young people or even getting our buy-in. I think they're just like, we don't need that. And that attitude is showing in all of the ways that they engage with us. You know, the fact that all these political parties went in, they were trying to wash people's clothes and that kind of thing. Yes, it's relatable, but it's not impactful. And unlike in the past, the media has a voice now that is not paid for because we have social media. You know, traditional media is paid for. We know that other opinions they're sponsored. But on social media, you've got Lebo, she's got her phone, she's seeing something, she's telling it now. So it's very difficult now for you to only rely on paid media because paid media it's discredited by social media when social media exposes what's really going on.
Yeah.
And the ANC rely too long on paid media. And we're not living in the era of paid media anymore. They have to go social or they're going to lose. And the EFF for me doing so well. I think they're just doing brilliantly from a marketing and branding perspective. I cannot fault them. They understand social. They understand guerrilla marketing. They understand shock horror. They understand being on the pulse of pop culture. The fact that Julius was there DJing at Until. That's a big deal. In a country like South Africa, that doesn't discredit you as a leader. People want you to be relatable to the most drastic degree. You know, for me, I'd be very shocked if my president was DJing at a party. I wouldn't want that. But I am not like the average South
he's
African.
appealing
So
to the youth.
if I was working on the party, I'd also say go DJ, go to
But when
not
it comes
just the youth, you know, people have a very interesting perspective of people. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you can finish your point. I wanted to just ask something.
Oh, no. So when we think about voters and demographics, right, that would mean age, where people stay, we have a very monolithic perspective of youth versus older people. And when we speak about the youth, we think that all youth are the same. So all youth go to parties. What is relatable to the youth is one thing, but the youth is 18 to 34, 35.
Yeah.
That's broad. So the interests of the youth are actually quite scattered. When we say the youth, you know, we're being very broad in how we're explaining what is appealing. I don't think the 28 to 35 youth care that he's at a party. You know, but I think the younger youth maybe do. But what I think it symbols or signals is that whether or not we like it, we understand that he understands the country. So it's signaling understanding more than it is signaling, you know, that we like it because we go to parties, therefore we want to see you there.
Mm,
Do you
mm.
get what I'm
I
saying?
get it. I get you. But now what I wanted to ask was, I mean, there seemed to be, because I was having a live and we're just after the elections, just a debriefing, just talking about how things went. And I just allowed people to share their sentiments. And a lot of people were talking about how the EFF performed and why it performed badly with the messaging of the open borders and the misunderstanding of the open border policy. And then an EFF member was very much triggered. I think it was just after the results. So they were very hurt with the results and got frustrated with that they that this open border policy thing is because South Africans are xenophobic and tribalistic. That's why they voted for the MK and they didn't vote for the EFF. And I was like, but I don't think that it's fair to say that we are xenophobic, whereas there has been a deliberate aim to discredit the EFF, and by playing these old clips, by saying that Julius Malema wants this. And I think that you, as the EFF, you sort of understood that there's a deliberate campaign against you guys, and you did nothing to ensure that your message was understood by the people. You relied on the people to sort of read the manifesto and understand the EFF without you countering this misinformation that was put out there. So I was saying, I don't think you guys have a strategy in fighting or countering this misinformation, and that's why the people rejected the EFF. I mean, what do you think about that in terms of the understanding of the messaging of the EFF in terms of the open border? Because if you ask any person who's just a normal person who didn't vote for the EFF, like, why didn't you vote for the EFF? They will tell you about the open border thing because it's misunderstood. And so I wanted to just maybe your thoughts on that.
How would you define misinformation?
Okay, a typical example would be there would be clips that would circulate where he would say, find creative, talking to African brothers, like to say, find creative ways to enter South Africa. So in the South African's mind is that when you hear Julius Malema saying, find creative ways to enter South Africa, and that South Africa, that our brothers are not stealing your jobs, foreigners are not stealing your jobs, and foreigners must just enter South Africa. There should be open borders. We must be united as Africa. So they'll be playing those clips. So they would, I mean, when I give them the opportunity to talk in the lives, they would explain that no, that video, for example, where he was saying, find creative ways, was a video that circulated that was misquoted, was taken from 2020, where the country was shut down. And then Julius Malema was responding to the people who were, why are Europeans allowed to fly in and the airports are open? No. Oh, God, I've got three backups now. Like, honestly, I don't know what is happening. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Welcome back.
Yeah, okay. I think let's just
Yep, I can hear
conclude
you.
and then yeah, because I don't know. I want to switch on to this now, my third
I could
backup.
hear you.
Slabs, I think let me just conclude because now I'm giving up with this.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Oh, but
And we
I
can
think
still do more
yes,
later. It's not a problem.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
I think let me just conclude my point and then we'll wrap up and then yeah. But I think that that's the next one we should have it on a live on TikTok so we can
Yeah.
take in
That
questions.
would be fun.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
yeah.
That would
But
be
I
cool.
wanted to just start a
Or even
promo.
on YouTube.
Oh,
We could
live on
do a
YouTube.
YouTube live.
Yes, I think we can
Yeah.
do that. It's easier instead of uploading this live because it takes time. I think let's do live then and then I'll promote it. But I wanted to take a promo and then start these conversations. Okay, so let me start with where I was at where I ended. So I was saying that we're seeing that with the EFF, there's a lot of misinformation that is out there or how EFF is perceived by the people that
Mhm.
it is a party that wants all Africans to be part of South Africa. It wants this open border. And then he was quoted as saying, find creative ways in entering South Africa, sort of endorsing people to cross borders and not enter illegally in South Africa. So, but they do clarify that no, those clips were taken from different topics. Then I was asking, but what are you then doing to ensure that you communicate a message that is saying that you are not for everyone to come in undocumented? You are not saying, like, so there was that gripe where they didn't understand the messaging that they are communicating and how they are received by the people. I'm not sure if you've noticed any of that in your interactions with how people perceive the EFF.
Yes, I've seen quite a bit of that, and this question of are South Africans xenophobic is going to be a topic of debate for a very, very long time, right?
Mm,
And I think it's a very complicated conversation simply because it also speaks to economics and it speaks to how we are led as a country. Everywhere in the world, a country is supposed to prioritize its own citizens before citizens from other spaces. That's just
mm,
what is done, right? So in any place in the world, people will have a problem when the citizens aren't given the opportunities they believe they deserve or that they believe their taxes pay for, and they see people who are not from that country getting that. It's not a Black thing, it's not a South African thing. It happens all over the world. We saw it
exactly.
in America with the
Exactly.
Mexicans.
Mm,
Trump was doing that. So I think the xenophobia thing is an intentional PR stunt that is being pulled by someone in power or somebody in
mm,
power that wants to almost manipulate how South Africa runs itself and put it at the mercy of certain bodies so that we don't just make our own decisions, in the global playing field. So that when they do talk about us, they say, no, but South Africa, you can't make these demands. You guys are xenophobic. Look in the news. That's what it looks like. To me,
mm.
it looks like more of a global political thing. Like there are people funding
Someone
it just
pulling
so that South Africa's got a weaker point when they want to discuss and assert their powers in bigger spaces. I don't think it should be
makes
this internal
sense.
thing. Unfortunately, that media narrative has also penetrated to the people. And that is misinformation, but it's not EFF misinformation. It's literally just media misinformation for South
Mm,
Africans. And there's a reason why that is being funded. I can't tell you why because I don't have all the facts, but I can tell you that whenever there's a story written about a people, somebody wrote it and it's benefiting somebody commercially.
wow.
Money is being made by us being called xenophobic. You have to understand that. Somebody's losing money, somebody's making money all the time. And that anybody who would speak about a unified Africa, we know what happened to the last person who spoke about that. We
Mm,
know.
mm, mm,
So we have
mm.
to expand our mindsets from just, oh, it's an EFF. It's not an EFF thing. The EFF is radical, which is why they will adopt a progressive mindset.
Mm,
But it's not an EFF mindset. We know what happened to the last person who said, let's unify Africa.
yeah,
Let's have one
yeah,
currency. We know what happened. We know
yeah.
what happens to those people every time. Why does that happen to those people?
It's not
That
beneficial.
misinformation is
Mm,
greater than the EFF. The only way
mm.
they can run away from it or disassociate from it is
Mm,
to not talk about it at all.
wow. Powerful.
really.
That's powerful.
So
That's
that's how
powerful.
you have to look at it. That's why I say it's
Yeah.
different when people are educated and they see the world differently to when they are victims of the PR being put on them. You know, when you can't see the world bigger than where you're
Bigger
living,
than where you
you
are.
already believe everything you see. But once you see the bigger picture, you go, but this is happening there, this is happening there. Then you start to go, Africa's actually the same as everywhere in the world. You know, and it's just
Same.
our dynamics are being positioned in a different way to other places.
Yeah, on that note, Lebo, I think you really triggered something that we really have to continue this conversation and talk about it. And I think the next time we meet, we are going to be talking about who's telling your story and what is your story. What is our story that is being
Thank
told out
you.
there? I think that's the next topic
That's a
because
great topic.
that's literally the crux of it. It touches on the first thing that we spoke about, like who's telling our story? What is our story? We don't even know the story that is being
Hmm.
told about us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is amazing. Wow.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot we don't say, right? There's a lot we
Yeah.
don't say. All I will say to people is don't take anything or anybody at face value. Um, Not every girl who's wearing makeup and looks cute is dumb. Not every man in a
Mm,
suit in a position of
it's
power should be there or is smart enough to occupy the space. You know,
wow.
not everything you see on the news is real, and not everything you don't see doesn't exist. So we really have to be
Sure.
very woke about our existence and understand that.
Yeah. Wow. So I want to thank you so much for your time, and we'll continue this conversation next week or yeah, I think let's
No,
say
thank you
next
for
week.
having me. I'm so glad you suggested it because
So
this is such a
excited.
great idea. So
Mm,
I'm excited. Thank you so much. And I
let
can't wait to do more.
let the conversation continue. Bye, guys.
Bye.